And welcome, of course. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thanks, Harlan. That was very enthusiastic. Thank you. Okay, let's. So these laws are amazing in some ways. You know, when you look at how some people treat others and the level of cruelty and lack of respect for other human beings, and lack of respect is definitely a euphemism. The cruelty. Some of these laws are absolutely amazing, and this is an example of one of them. To really, people who are in different situations, and even if somebody is impoverished, it doesn't mean they shouldn't be treated with respect. And I'm going to let the Torah speak for itself at this point. Ki tasher bereacha mashat ma'uma. Should you act as a creditor with your fellow, or any kind of loan, right? Lo tavo el beito la'avot avoto. You should not come into his house to seize the pledge, right? To seize his pledge. So again, what are we talking about? We're talking about treating someone who may be in adverse circumstances still, to give them a sense of respect, to treat them respectfully. And I think that is such a beautiful application of the notion that every single human being is created in the divine image. Very interesting law. Ki tashe bereacha, right? Hachov tachuv bechavercha. It simply this word tashe is not such a a common word. So Rashi is giving us a more common Hebrew word, meaning when you create a debt in your fellow, right? In other words, when you act as a creditor. Mashat ma'uma. So he says, chov shel klum, any kind of loan, anything that you lend him. Okay. So this is from the Sifrei, because he says sham, in other words, ibid, right? On to the next verse. Bachutz ta'amud. So not only should you not go into the house, but you should stand outside. V'ha'ish, and the man, asher ata noshevo, and the person with whom you act as a creditor, yotzi elecha et ha'avot hachutza, should bring to you the pledge outside. You shouldn't invade his private space. Beautiful. Ve'im ish anihu, and should he be a person who's impoverished, should he be a poor person, lo tishkav ba'avoto, you should not sleep with his pledge. And Rashi clarifies it because it sounds like maybe his pledge is a blanket, right? Something like that. But you'll see how he interprets it. So, lo tishkav ba'avoto, you shall not sleep with his pledge. And this is from the tractate Baba Metzia, page 114. Lo tishkav ba'avoto etzlacha. You should not lie down. In other words, you shouldn't go to sleep with his pledge with you. And here to clarify, Hashev tashiv, you shall surely return it. Lo et havot kavur hashemesh, you shall surely return to him the pledge when the sun goes down. V'shachav b'salmato uve'rachacha, so that he sleeps with his cloak and blesses you. And that is because when you do that, if you think about it, it's a way of, I think, clarifying the fact that you don't own it. right? That even though he has given it to you in pledge, it's simply a security and not your property, not unless he defaults on the loan. But as long as the loan is in effect, it is not yours. So, and he will bless you. And you will be attributed righteousness. Lifnei Hashem Elokecha, before the Lord your God. So, Kavor Hashemesh, literally it means when the sun comes. And the question is, does the sun come up or does the sun come down and set? And it can, I think in this case, you will see, very often it does mean when at sundown. So that's going to be the first interpretation. Im ktsut laila, if it is a garment of the night. Who? If it is a garment of the night. The im ktsut yom, and if it is a day, a garment of the day, hachazirehu baboker, you should return it to him in the morning. Ukvar, so he says that's how we're going to understand Uva Hashemesh, meaning when the sun sets, right? Ukvar Katuv, Ve'ela HaMishpatim. So he says it's already written in the Parsha of Mishpatim in the book of Exodus, the Parsha that follows the Yitro, where the Ten Commandments are. And here's the reference, Exodus chapter 22. And in there it says Ad Bo Hashemesh, right? So until the sun comes, literally. So here it says Kevo Hashemesh, and there it says Ad Bo Hashemesh, Tashivenu Lo, you shall return it to him. Kol Hayom Tashivenu Lo, right? So in other words, you should give it back to him for the entire day. Ukevo Hashemesh Tikachenu, and when the sun sets, that's when you should take it. So if it's something that he's going to need on a personal level, and we've already had some sense of things like staple food we talked about, and here we're talking about basic clothing, right? Then you should take it. Uverachacha, and he shall bless you. Ve'im eino mevarchecha, and if he doesn't bless you, Mikol makom, nevertheless, ulacha tiyeh tzedakah, it will be considered to you as an act of righteousness. Law, is any comments before we go on to the next chapter? But I think these are laws of just human decency. So I guess I do need to say, it says bereacha, which means with your fellow. Yeah, and I think that there are times when that's understood to mean a fellow Jew. But I truthfully feel that this is when it's talking about a fellow, it's talking about your fellow human being. And I do understand that at times when Jews were persecuted up and down, that the understanding of that might well be narrowed. But I want to see a universality in my religion, and I want to see a universality of God's dominion over the entire world. And I know that that's something we yearn for in our prayers, especially, for example, in the Aleinu that we say at the end of every service. And so I'm not willing to take it here as something that only refers to fellow Jews. I just can't hold that as a moral imperative. It has to be universalizable. So,
Rabbi, in other words, you could don't do interest with your fellow Jew, but you can do interest with a boy.
well, okay, so a non-Jew. So
Yeah.
that's the way it was understood. Remember we discussed that in an earlier class, right? That's the way it was understood. The problem has to do with context, and we know, right? You've heard me say it enough times that if you had $1 for every time I said it, you'd be a wealthy man. Circumstances alter cases, right? where I think the Torah is speaking not about the kind of loan that you might call a business loan. Um, I think where it says not to charge interest. Now I know that there are those who interpret halacha in a way that says the Torah doesn't specify, and in that case, the Torah is saying you're not to charge interest of any kind, period. Okay.
Sure.
Here are the circumstances. There was a time, and there are certain individuals who are, uh, greedy. But back then, it was very common to charge very, very high interest rates. I mean, extraordinarily high interest rates, the kind
Mm.
of rates that nowadays would be charged by criminals.
Mm.
And I think that again, we're also that's in general why I think the Torah says we shouldn't charge interest. Although I could tell you that as it develops within Jewish law, it's even the smallest amount. It's considered the smallest amount. Um, that's one thing. And the reason why these interest rates were so high had a lot to do, I believe, with the fact that there was such a high probability of default. So I don't think it's right for Jews to charge exorbitant interest rates. Um, and it's an unfortunate thing. And we know that historically Jews paid very heavily for this kind of practice. Um, on the other hand, money lending in general, it's a necessary in our world. It's a necessary evil, and if you want to call it an evil, and being able to formulate some kind of way to profit by it, I understand. The Torah basically doesn't want us to have this kind of attitude towards property and our physical relationship to the world. The Torah basically wants us to be able to live modestly and generously and compassionately. Uh, the world has yet to become that kind of world, and all we can do is yearn for it. And in these particular laws, as best as we can fulfill them, we bring the world a little closer to that kind of time. And I think I'm going to end the lesson here. I'm going to stop the share and mark the place. And please God, we're very close to finishing this parsha. And with God's help, we'll finish it next year. So, hi, David. Any thoughts, David? What do you think of this? Any comment?
I yeah, I do not have any specific thoughts, so sorry.
No, that's all right. That's okay. And Judith, you joined
Hi,
us too. Yes.
I got here a little late. Why are we ending so early?
Well, it's Friday. I'm going to stop. Let me stop the recording.